What if I told you that there is a single mineral, one that your grandparents likely consumed in abundance, that has quietly disappeared from the modern diet over the past 70 years, and that this disappearance may explain more about the chronic health problems affecting adults over 55 than almost any other nutritional factor we have studied? I want you to consider something with me for a moment. We live in an age of unprecedented medical advancement. We have medications for blood pressure, for cholesterol, for blood sugar, for bone density. We have imaging technology that can see inside the human body with remarkable precision. We have more health information available at our fingertips than any generation in human history. And yet, rates of heart disease remain stubbornly high. Cognitive decline continues to accelerate. Muscle weakness and frailty still rob older adults of their independence. Sleep disorders have become almost epidemic. Anxiety and mood disturbances affect millions. For decades, I believed, as most of my colleagues believed, that these were simply inevitable consequences of aging, that our bodies wear down. That decline is the natural order. But when I began studying populations around the world who seem to age differently, who remain strong and mentally sharp well into their 80s and 90s, I started to question that assumption. What were they doing that we were not? The answer, I discovered, was not primarily about what they were doing. It was about something they were consuming, something present in their water, their soil, their food, in quantities that have largely vanished from modern Western diets. I have spent the past 15 years reviewing research on this mineral. I have discussed it with colleagues at research institutions across 3 continents. I have changed my own daily habits because of what I learned. And I now raise this topic with virtually every patient I see over the age of 55. What I am about to share with you is not alternative medicine. It is not a fringe theory. It is supported by hundreds of peer-reviewed studies from institutions like Harvard, the National Institutes of Health, the Karolinska Institute, and dozens of major research universities. Yet somehow, it remains the forgotten mineral. The mineral I am referring to is magnesium. Now, I realize that magnesium may not sound exotic or exciting. You may have seen it listed on supplement bottles and thought little of it. You may have heard vague mentions that it is good for muscle cramps. But I assure you, what I am about to explain goes far beyond muscle cramps. Magnesium is involved in over 600 biochemical reactions in the human body. It is essential for energy production at the cellular level. It regulates muscle and nerve function. It is required for protein synthesis, blood sugar control, and blood pressure regulation. It plays a critical role in bone structure, and emerging research suggests it is deeply connected to brain health and cognitive aging. Without adequate magnesium, your cells cannot produce energy efficiently. Your muscles cannot relax properly after contracting. Your blood vessels cannot maintain appropriate flexibility. Your nervous system cannot achieve the calm state necessary for restorative sleep. In short, magnesium is not merely helpful, it is foundational. And here is what surprised even me as a physician who has spent decades reviewing nutritional research. According to data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, approximately 60% of American adults do not meet the recommended daily intake of magnesium. Among adults over 70, some estimates suggest that figure rises to nearly 80%. 80% of older adults may be walking around with inadequate magnesium levels, experiencing symptoms they attribute to aging that may in fact be symptoms of deficiency. Let me explain how we arrived at this situation, because understanding the history helps clarify why this problem is so widespread and so overlooked. 70 years ago, the average American diet provided substantially more magnesium than it does today. The reasons for this decline are multiple. First, our soil has changed. Industrial farming practices have depleted minerals from agricultural soil. Crops grown in mineral-depleted soil contain fewer minerals. A study comparing nutrient content of vegetables between 1950 and 1999 found significant declines in multiple minerals, including magnesium. Second, our water has changed. In many traditional cultures, drinking water came from mineral-rich springs and wells. Modern water treatment, while important for removing contaminants, also removes minerals. Bottled water and filtered water typically contain minimal magnesium. Third, our food choices have changed. Magnesium is found predominantly in whole foods, leafy green vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, and whole grains. The shift toward processed foods, which lose magnesium during refinement, has dramatically reduced intake. Fourth, and this is particularly relevant for older adults, the ability to absorb magnesium declines with age. Stomach acid production decreases, intestinal absorption becomes less efficient. Kidney function, which regulates magnesium retention, often diminishes. Fifth, many common medications interfere with magnesium absorption or increase magnesium excretion. Proton pump inhibitors, widely prescribed for acid reflux, have been shown to reduce magnesium absorption. Certain diuretics increase urinary magnesium loss. Even some antibiotics can affect magnesium status. The result of all these factors is a population-wide deficiency that has developed gradually over generations without most people or most physicians recognizing it. When I first began investigating this research, I was struck by how many symptoms commonly attributed to aging might actually be symptoms of inadequate magnesium. Difficulty sleeping, muscle cramps and spasms, feelings of anxiety or restlessness, fatigue that does not improve with rest, elevated blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms, muscle weakness, poor memory and concentration. If these sound familiar to you, you are not alone. And while I am not suggesting that magnesium deficiency is the only cause of such symptoms, the research increasingly suggests it is a contributing factor far more often than we previously recognized. Let me share with you what the research actually shows, because I believe you deserve to see the evidence that has convinced me and many of my colleagues that this issue demands more attention. In 2017, researchers published a comprehensive meta-analysis in the journal Nutrients, examining the relationship between magnesium and cardiovascular health. They reviewed data from over 1 million participants across multiple studies. Their findings showed that higher magnesium intake was associated with significantly reduced risk of stroke, heart failure, and type 2 diabetes. A 2016 study in the journal BMC Medicine followed over 40,000 participants for an average of 13 years. Those with higher magnesium intake had a 22% lower risk of cardiovascular disease and a 28% lower risk of type 2 diabetes compared to those with lower intake. These are not small effects. These are substantial risk reductions associated with a single mineral. But the cardiovascular findings are only part of the picture. A 2022 study from the University of South Australia examined the relationship between magnesium and brain health. Using data from over 6,000 participants, researchers found that higher magnesium intake was associated with larger brain volumes and reduced white matter lesions, both markers associated with healthier cognitive aging. A 2021 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that magnesium supplementation improved sleep quality in older adults, with participants falling asleep faster and experiencing more restorative sleep. Research on magnesium and bone health has shown that adequate magnesium is essential for proper calcium metabolism. Without sufficient magnesium, calcium cannot be properly incorporated into bone. Some researchers have suggested that the common practice of supplementing calcium without attention to magnesium may actually be counterproductive. A fascinating 2023 study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden examined magnesium status in relation to inflammation markers. They found that individuals with higher magnesium levels had significantly lower C-reactive protein, a key marker of systemic inflammation linked to virtually every chronic disease of aging. What emerges from this research is a picture of magnesium as a master regulator, a mineral so fundamental to so many processes that inadequacy creates dysfunction across multiple systems simultaneously. This is why symptoms of magnesium deficiency are so varied and so easily attributed to other causes. The mineral is not specific to one organ or one function. It is woven into the fabric of cellular health itself. Now I want to turn to something that I find particularly compelling about this research, and that is the observation of populations who seem to age differently than the modern Western norm. When researchers study long-living populations, the so-called blue zones, certain patterns emerge repeatedly. These populations tend to eat whole foods grown in mineral-rich soil. They drink water from natural sources. They consume diets naturally high in magnesium-rich foods, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, legumes. In Okinawa, Japan, where extreme longevity has been extensively studied, the traditional diet is rich in green vegetables, tofu, and seaweed, all magnesium-dense foods. The water in Okinawa is notably high in mineral content. In Sardinia, Italy, another region of exceptional longevity, the diet includes abundant beans, whole grains, and locally grown vegetables from mineral-rich Mediterranean soil. In Icaria, Greece, researchers have documented diets high in wild greens, legumes, and olive oil. The mountainous terrain means water passes through mineral-rich rock formations before reaching wells. These populations are not taking magnesium supplements. They are simply eating foods grown in healthy soil and drinking water that retains its natural mineral content. Their magnesium intake, by default, is substantially higher than the typical modern Western diet provides. When we reanalyze dietary surveys from these populations, the difference in magnesium intake compared to average American adults was striking. In some cases, traditional diets provided 2 to 3 times the magnesium of typical modern diets. This does not prove causation, of course. These populations differ from modern Western populations in many ways. But the consistency of the pattern across geographically and culturally distinct groups suggests that the mineral content of traditional diets may be more important than we have appreciated. I want to address a question I suspect many of you are now asking. Why has this not received more attention in mainstream medicine? There are several reasons, I believe. First, magnesium deficiency is difficult to diagnose through standard testing. Most magnesium in the body is stored in bones and tissues. Blood serum tests, the most commonly ordered, reflect only about 1% of total body magnesium and can appear normal even when tissue stores are depleted. Second, the symptoms of magnesium deficiency are nonspecific: fatigue, muscle cramps, sleep difficulties, anxiety. These symptoms have many possible causes. Physicians are trained to look for more dramatic diagnoses, not mineral insufficiency. Third, there is no pharmaceutical intervention for magnesium deficiency. While this mineral is inexpensive and widely available, it does not represent a profitable treatment category. Research funding flows toward patentable interventions. Fourth, the decline in dietary magnesium has been gradual, spanning decades. Unlike an acute outbreak or sudden health crisis, a slow population-wide decline does not generate alarm. The result is that most adults over 55 have never had a meaningful conversation with their physician about magnesium status, despite evidence suggesting that the majority are not obtaining adequate amounts. This is something I now discuss with my own patients, and I want to share with you the approach I recommend. First, consider your dietary sources. Dark leafy greens such as spinach and Swiss chard are excellent sources. Nuts, particularly almonds and cashews, provide significant magnesium. Seeds, especially pumpkin seeds, are among the most concentrated food sources. Legumes, whole grains, and dark chocolate also contribute meaningful amounts. If you examine your typical diet honestly, how many of these foods do you consume regularly? Many adults over 55 eat few green vegetables, minimal nuts and seeds, and rely heavily on processed foods that provide almost no magnesium. Second, consider your water source. If you drink primarily bottled water or heavily filtered water, you may be missing the mineral content that traditional water sources provided. Some individuals choose mineral waters specifically for their magnesium content. Third, for many adults over 55, supplementation may be worth considering. However, I want to offer some guidance here, because not all magnesium supplements are equivalent. Magnesium oxide, the most common and least expensive form, is poorly absorbed. Some estimates suggest absorption rates as low as 4%. While it may help with constipation, it is not ideal for raising tissue magnesium levels. Magnesium citrate is better absorbed and reasonably well tolerated. Magnesium glycinate, which combines magnesium with the amino acid glycine, is well absorbed and may be particularly helpful for sleep and relaxation. Magnesium threonate has shown some promise specifically for brain health, as it appears to cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively. The appropriate dose varies by individual, but general recommendations for supplementation typically range from 200 to 400 milligrams daily. Starting with a lower dose and increasing gradually can help minimize digestive effects, which are the most common side effect. However, and I want to emphasize this strongly, supplementation should not replace dietary improvement. There are hundreds of compounds in whole foods that work synergistically. Magnesium from food comes packaged with other nutrients that enhance its absorption and utilization. The goal is not simply to take a pill, but to restore a pattern of eating that humans evolved with over millennia, and that has been disrupted only in the past few generations. Most people over 60 notice the symptoms I have described but do not know why they occur: the muscle cramps that wake them at night, the sleep that never quite refreshes, the blood pressure that remains elevated despite medication. The subtle cognitive changes they fear are early dementia. Some of these symptoms have other causes. I am not suggesting that magnesium is a cure for everything. But when a single mineral is involved in 600 biochemical reactions, and when the majority of older adults are not obtaining adequate amounts, it seems reasonable to address this fundamental deficiency before assuming that symptoms are simply inevitable consequences of aging. What I have observed in my own practice, when patients optimize their magnesium status through diet and appropriate supplementation, is often a gradual improvement in multiple areas. Better sleep, fewer muscle cramps, more stable mood, sometimes modest improvements in blood pressure. These changes are not dramatic or immediate. Correcting a long-standing deficiency takes time, but they are real, and they represent the body functioning more as it was designed to function. I want to offer you a perspective that I share with my patients. We have been taught to think of aging as decline, as a process of wearing out, as something we must simply accept and manage with medications. But what if some of what we call aging is actually depletion? What if the tiredness, the weakness, the stiffness, the cognitive slowing are not inevitable breakdown, but rather the predictable result of cells trying to function without the raw materials they require? From this perspective, the task is not merely to treat symptoms, but to restore foundational nutrition, to give our cells what they need to do the work they are designed to do. Magnesium is one piece of this picture, an important piece, perhaps the most overlooked piece, but one piece nonetheless. If you are watching this and recognizing yourself in what I have described, I would encourage you to reflect on one daily habit you might change, perhaps adding a serving of leafy greens, perhaps switching to a mineral-rich water, perhaps discussing supplementation with your healthcare provider. Small changes, sustained over time, can produce meaningful results. I am curious to hear from those of you watching. What symptoms have you attributed to aging that you now wonder might be related to mineral status? Do you consume the magnesium-rich foods I mentioned regularly? Have you ever had this conversation with your physician? Your experiences matter, and I read the responses to these discussions carefully. They inform my understanding of what topics need more attention, what explanations need more clarity. I will close with this thought. You have more influence over how you age than you may have been led to believe. Not total control, certainly, but meaningful influence. The choices you make about what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and yes, whether you obtain adequate essential minerals, these choices accumulate over years and decades. It is not too late to benefit from optimizing your magnesium status. The body retains remarkable capacity for improvement when given what it needs. The forgotten mineral may not stay forgotten much longer. Research attention is increasing. Clinical awareness is growing. But you do not need to wait for mainstream medicine to fully catch up. The evidence is already strong enough to act upon. Thank you for your attention to this topic. I hope it has given you something useful to consider, and I look forward to continuing these conversations. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again soon.